The current ownership and production of Draught Bass is a bit of a complicated situation, so here's a new and quite possibly ill-advised segment called Mergers and Acquisitions Story Time with Tweedy. Once upon a time there was a company called Bass, whose business was almost solely focused on brewing beer. At the start of the 20th century, when it was common for other large brewers to also own and operate pubs, Bass weren't initially very interested in that sort of thing and instead relied on the reputation of their beer to drive sales in outlets they didn't own themselves. However, during the course of the 20th century, Bass was involved in various mergers and acquisitions of other brewers, including perhaps most notably Mitchells and Butlers in the early 1960s, then Charringtons later in that decade. This way, Bass did eventually acquire a pub portfolio of its own. The beer orders came along in 1989. This was legislation designed to break up the stranglehold the breweries had on pubs. By this time, Bass had a portfolio of over 7,000 pubs, so they were firmly in the crosshairs of the Monopolies and Mergers Commission. They were forced to split the company up into two divisions, one for hospitality and one for brewing. In the year 2000, Bass as a company name ceased to exist. The hospitality side of the business was spun off into a company called Six Continents, later again subdivided into a pub company we now know as Mitchells and Butlers, and a hotel company called Intercontinental. The brewing side of the business was sold to a Belgian brewing company called Interbrew, the makers of Stella Artois, and that included the rights to the Bass brand. In 2004, Interbrew then merged with Brazilian brewer Ambev, and together they formed a company called InBev. Then in 2008, InBev merged with American brewer Anheuser-Busch to create the global behemoth we know today as AB InBev, the world's largest brewer. As if all of that were not already complicated enough, the new owners of the Bass brand had decided they weren't going to make Draught Bass themselves, and instead licensed it out to Marston's, which on the plus side meant brewing remained in the ancestral home of Bass, Burton-on-Trent. This would almost be a happy ending were it not for the fact that Marston's too fell foul of what seems to be the inevitable fate of all large British brewers. They sell off their brewing operations to focus on running their pub estate. This happened in 2020 and initially took the form of a joint venture with Carlsberg's UK operations to form a company called Carlsberg Marston's Brewing Company. However, in 2024, Carlsberg bought Marston out entirely, and as of 2025, the corporate entity which now owns Marston's former brewing operations is called Carlsberg Britvic. They still brew Draught Bass for AB InBev at the Marston Brewery site in Burton-on-Trent.